apologies for keeping you waiting so long. Our flight was delayed and lots of traffic. But and the rest of my sangha still on the way. So I think some of you know I've been in India now for since towards the end of December, and walking for most of the time in the rural areas of Maharashtra, in two areas, one in the Buldana district, which is about 50 kilometers, where I've been walking about 50 kilometers east of Ajanta caves. And then we walked from Nagpur to Chandrapur. So that it's not a really tough schedule. We walk about 20 kilometers a day, 10 in the morning, 10 in the afternoon, and stopping at almost every village and giving precepts and some Dhamma teaching to the villagers who are Buddhist and very proud of their Buddhist heritage, but having almost no opportunity to meet bhikkhus or to receive Dhamma teaching. So they are very appreciative and joyful to see the bhikkhus come. So from there we went to Mumbai yesterday, come Hyderabad today, Bangalore tomorrow, Bangkok the day after. So, what's the best way we have to spend time together? Anybody would like to discuss anything in particular? That would be easy for me if you, yes. Anger.
Okay. Can you come and speak in the mic? Everybody can listen.
About how to deal with entanglements in relationships with others. It can be anger. When someone is behaving in a way that causes us displeasure, how to not get attached to their behavior, be fine with it.
Yeah. Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So Buddha's teachings, the Eightfold Path, which we can abbreviate or bring together as training of conduct, training of the heart, training in wisdom. So those three things are not separable. It's not like there's a teaching you start with and then you go step by step. So I will compare it to like the surface of a sphere. You say, what is the beginning point on the surface of a sphere? There's no beginning point. And so with any specific problem, you have to approach it from all of those angles, from your conduct and your heart, your emotions, and your wisdom and your understanding and your thinking. These are all very much connected. So for the training in conduct, then our main tool is intention. And here we can observe, can't we, that we can't just make a determination that I'm not going to get angry anymore. You can't achieve that with with willpower or intention. But you can, although it's difficult, it is possible to refrain from the expression of anger, not to impose that on others through your actions or your speech. First of all, that is a great gift you give to the people around you, because for any stable relationship, a family or in a community, people have to feel safe. And by taking a first precept and refraining from any kind of physical or verbal violence, you give a gift of safety. People feel safe around you. Without precept, you have anger. You're unpredictable, and maybe you can be two completely different people when you're in a good mood and when you're in a bad mood. So people need more than that. And so you say, even if I get angry, I'm working on that. I'm a work in progress. But in the meantime, I will not abuse you physically or verbally because of my anger. So that in itself is a purifying practice, because when you act upon your anger or you speak with anger, you feed the anger, you feed the habit. So a lot of the preliminary development in Dhamma is really replacing unwholesome habits with wholesome habits. It's very straightforward, So, and what you will observe is, if you do this consistently, it has to be consistent, then the intention to act upon anger starts to atrophy. It's like a muscle that you don't use. It doesn't disappear, but it becomes much weaker. So of course the first time that you try to create a new habit, you're going against the stream, and there's stress and it's difficult. But once you've done it once, you have an example. I've done it once, I can do it twice. I've done it twice, I can do it 3 times. And seeing that gives you some confidence. So it's important to recognize the distinction between the intention to refrain from expressing anger and repressing anger. So repressing anger is, when you see people with red faces, you say, I'm not angry. It's like, and they're not aware, or they're able to explain away their anger. So you're fully aware of anger as a mental and physical phenomena right now. But the precept allows you just to step back from it, at least in its grosser, coarser manifestation. And you're not its prisoner, you're not its slave anymore, So that gives you like a breathing space. And you're not creating bad karma, which is going to have serious consequences for yourself in the future, but in this life and future lives. But now we have to move into the area, or at the same time, we're moving in the area of emotions and kusala dhammas and akusala dhammas. And again, we're still, in this level, or this area of practice, we're still very much in the replacement. So we want to replace akusala dhammas with kusala dhammas. And probably the 3 chief akusala dhammas that you need to cultivate to replace the akusala dhammas are mindfulness, patience, and loving kindness. So these have to be cultivated consistently and continuously. And mindfulness is probably the key tool here, because before we get angry, like really kind of red hot angry, it doesn't just come out of nothing. And if you observe very closely, you'll see often the physical expressions of anger manifest before the thinking and the mental. And we all tend to have distinctive pattern of arousal when we start to get angry. We start off with some irritation. And so if you can, if you tune into that and you remember that and you're present to that, you get those first sensations. It may be in your chest or in your arm or in your, and you know, oh, this is the anger pattern. And so it's really quite weak at this point. It's not at the level of full-blown anger. And so you can cut it off very easily. Anger involves certain kinds of thoughts and certain kinds of intentions. And so by cultivating the intention for loving kindness, may all beings be well, may all beings be happy without exception, then if you're able to sustain that as not just as a thought, but as a general kind of attitude to the world around you, then the likelihood that the unwholesome dhammas will arise is much reduced. Thank you. And then patience, you know, sometimes you're starting to get angry, and you know you're getting angry, and but you just can't resist it. So developing patience is absolutely central. Like in my monastic training, that was like more than anything else. That was the emphasis of Ajahn Chah and my teachers. And of course the Buddha himself in the Awada Patimokkha says, Kanti paramang tapo titika. Like Kanti, or patient endurance, is the supreme incinerator of defilements. So the Buddha gave it a great, this really central role in his teaching. So we've covered conduct and using intention to refrain in order to prevent yourself creating bad karma through body and speech because of that anger. You're not feeding it anymore. And you're able to see it as a phenomena more clearly rather than who you are. You're developing wholesome dhammas which directly counter it with the goal of them replacing it to a greater extent. But the key feature, of course, is wisdom and thinking and analyzing. You know, what is this anger? Let's say someone was to slap you on the face, okay? So I hope it never happens, but someone slap you on the face. And it would be accurate and legitimate to say, that person hurt me, okay? And it's a universal truth of what happens with a human hand against a human face, meaning that whoever was slapped, whether it was a virtuous person or an unvirtuous person or even an arahant, they would feel pain and they could say, that person hurt me. But mental pain is something different, isn't it? It's not merely a matter of a cause and an effect in the same way that physical pain is, or the imposition of physical pain is. And for example, you may see in yourself that let's say somebody says some harsh words to you, and the result, the mental disturbance or the pain that's felt, is not only dependent on that person's words, but your interpretation of them, the meaning you give to them, and who it is who says those words, what you feel about that person. Is it someone you love, someone you're indifferent to? Is it an enemy? And it can be dependent on your mood at the time, if you're in a good mood or you're stressed out and you're in a bad mood. So the external trigger is not a cause, it's a conditioning factor for anger. But the cause is within you. So no matter how nasty someone might be to you, it's not necessarily the case that therefore you will be hurt or angry. So this, for wisdom development in Buddhism, we're always looking at causality and contribution. You can see that like the Western way is like dualistic way, and it's always kind of who's to blame, you know. So it's like if somebody says, well, actually there was this and that, and you say, oh, you're just making excuses. You're trying to blame the victim or something like that, you know. So, and this kind of idea that someone's to blame and who's to blame. But in Buddha Dhamma, we're looking at contribution. What contributed to this? You know, what was the essential contribution? What were minor contributions? And what is the underlying root cause? So in the Four Noble Truths, the Buddha says the root cause is defilement or ignorance and craving. And everything else are contributory conditions. Okay. So applying that with the case of anger, what is the craving there? What is the defilement, which is the root cause of anger? Yeah, exactly. Is frustrated desire in most cases. You think that person should not do that. You know, they should not be like that. I don't want them to be like that. I want them to be like this. So rather than accepting the truth of the situation as it presents itself, you're saying, this is not how I want it to be. This is not how I want you to be. This is not how I want you to speak to me. This is not how I want things to go. You know, and that you have to be able to see that clearly. And there are many wise reflections which will give you motivation to deal with anger. One very powerful simile or analogy is like a single match could light a fire that would destroy like 1 million acres of forest and all the wildlife within it. And similarly, just a single moment of anger, you can destroy all of the merit that you've made all in your whole life. My uncle is passed away now. He used to work in a high security prison, and as he got more senior, he would spend the time with people with like the life sentences, and murderers, people like this. And he said, this kind of like no different people you would meet. You know, most of them. Of course, there are like psychopaths and people like that, but most of them. They were just leading an ordinary life, family life, and then one day they lost their temper and stabbed somebody or did something, and so just in a completely more or less blameless life, just a couple of moments of madness through anger, and they are now forever after murderers. Their identity in the world is defined by a few moments of anger. And when you're angry, you can do anything. You know, things that you would never dream of doing. And things you would say, no, it's impossible, I would never. When you're angry, you can do that. So think about these things and And bring up in your past, although it may be painful, when you can, times where you've really made a mess of things through your anger. You've hurt people who you love. You've damaged or completely destroyed relationships. And you have to bring these things up. So this is not something I can be complacent about. This is something I really need to sort out. And with the Buddha's teachings, you have the tools to do that. So wise reflection is important. There's a nice Zen story, or sort of Zen-influenced story. I don't know if you know this one, about the man living by the side of a lake. And he has a boat, and he's very proud of his new boat. And he rows his boat out into the middle of the lake, and another boat crashes into his boat, and his boat's damaged. And of course he's very angry with his boat. How could you, big lake, and can you not be more careful? And so he returns to his house and a jetty, and he repairs his boat. And sometimes later he goes out in the boat, and the very same thing happens. Another boat comes and crashes into his boat, and exactly the same amount of damage. But when he looks round, there's nobody rowing the second boat. It's just drifted into the back of his boat. So the interesting question is, given the fact that the damage to the boat in both cases is the same, would the anger be the same? And then why not? Yeah, well, there's the perception of somebody who's done that to me. So this is very central to anger and most defilements. There's this strong sense of us and them, me and you, me the injured party, him the aggressor or the bad guy. And so that's another area to really look into. But ultimately, to be free of anger, then this is the role of vipassana, where you're seeing anger as a conditioned phenomena that arises and passes away in the mind. It's not who you are, it's a condition. So that's something that you're gradually, so developing and understanding more clearly as you practice meditation. But firstly, to as I say, at the very least, keep the precept and don't impose your anger on somebody else, and don't blame other people and situations for, your unhappiness.
Respected monk, so I have two questions. First one is, how to forget the past experience of the life and be always life in present moment. And the second question is, I heard that monks, they used to take one meal in a day. How they manage with that? Please elaborate these two questions.
I take one meal a day, usually, in Thailand. Yeah, okay. I think I've got it. 2 questions. I start off with the second one. I mean, it's dead easy eating one meal a day. It's not difficult at all if everyone else is doing it, and it's just what you're used to. And in Thailand, we get up in the forest monasteries 3 and 3:30 to 5 is morning chanting and meditation, and then there's a clean-up period, and then 5:30 to 6:30 or 7 the monks walking out of the forest into the surrounding villages. And we come back, and then there are people come from the village to cook and add some supplemental dishes. And most forest monasteries would have their one meal of the day at around 8 or 8:30 in the morning. And you just find what you need, and you. I don't see a problem. I mean, you can keep a very healthy way of living, and in the evening, then often there will be some tea or coffee or fruit juice and some small requisite, like allowable, what we call allowable medicines. But often even that is not necessary. So it's one of those things about monastic life that you think sounds like really difficult and it's easy, and there are other things that you think were easy and they're actually difficult. And so you have to go live in a monastery and try it out. But in Wat Nanachat, in Ajahn Chah's foreign monastery, there is a constant stream of people from around the world who come to spend time in the monastery, and they all get used to it within 2 or 3 days, And I tell people, if you get hungry in the evening, there's a very good technique to deal with that. You just go, swallow your saliva 2 or 3 times. You wouldn't be amazed. You can feel better immediately. So in our monasteries in other countries, then often they have something in the morning and then a later meal, and that part of adapting to the climate, adapting to the culture. Whereas in Thailand, people get up first thing in the morning and they cook rice, from 4 or 5 in the morning, and that doesn't happen, of course, in Western countries. And eating one meal a day at 9 doesn't work mostly for most monasteries. They often have a work period in the morning, and so having some snack, some small breakfast before the work period makes sense. But monks can also keep the one meal practice if they wish to. It's optional. So, and then go on to the other question about letting go. The thing if you've been through a traumatic experience, like a soldier who has PTSD, or someone's had some terrible experience, and they may need some individual counseling with a therapist or something. But if just generally talking about unpleasant memories or things, the first thing to be aware of, and this relates to anger also, is what we call vipavatanha. It's like not wanting something, not wanting to have this in your mind, not wanting this memory, and that doesn't lead to it disappearing from your mind. It actually makes it stronger. The point that I think is often overlooked is when we're talking about present, past, and future. The past, what is the past? As something that you can experience, not as an idea. It's a memory. And the future is a thought. So being in the present moment doesn't mean absence of memory and thought. You can't have a completely still, empty mind except in certain passages of a meditation session. But knowing memory as memory and knowing thought as thought means you're in the present moment. The past is a present memory. The future is a present thought. So you're recognizing that, and you're in the present moment. You can't function without memory and thought. I mean, how could you live your life? And when you have you meet a problem of some kind, you need to recall past experiences with such a problem. What solution did you come up with? You are constantly drawing upon memory to be able to function efficiently in the present, drawing upon your education, your experience, your training. And similarly, we have so many responsibilities in our life, and we have to prioritize what comes first, what comes second. Or even arahants have to have passports and have to book tickets before they travel somewhere. So thinking and imagination and memory, these are not the problems. It's when you become lost in them and you forget that that's what they are. This is what being in the present moment means. So you don't have to, you cannot sort of fight with memories or try to drive them out of your mind or turn your back on them. It's not a good policy. But when you are present enough that a memory arises, and then you are aware of a memory as a memory and you don't react to it emotionally, then if it's a painful memory, it will gradually fade because you're not feeding it. But if a memory comes up and you either grasp onto it and get caught up in it, or you push it away, you feed it. And pushing away feeds it every much as taking hold of it. So you're simply aware of something. It's there and it goes. You don't have to do anything. That's its nature. It arises and passes away. And in our lives, this is one of the key changes or evolution, if you like, of the mind through Buddhist meditation. Everything that happens in your mind are events, okay? And so there are two sides. One is content, and the other is process. And we tend to, just by nature, we obsess with content, and we overlook process. So process is not anything very, very profound. It's that every single event, every thought, every emotion has a beginning and an end. And it's simply to be aware of that. This is whatever has the nature to arise, has the nature to pass away. It's such a simple truth to articulate, but the most profound realization. And after the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, Anya Kundanya realizes stream entry, the first Sāvaka in the Buddha Sasana, and he expresses his insight that leads him to stream entry, is that whatever is of the nature to arise is of the nature to pass away. So this is both a very simple and apparently mundane truth, and yet at the same time it's the most profound thing ever. So with these negative emotions and memories and so on, this is the skill, is just to shift from content mode to process mode. And that will help you to release the attachment. Okay? You just have to do it. It's nothing more mystical than applying your effort to learning the piano or the violin or how to drive a car. It's just hard work, and you have to keep at it and don't get discouraged. And observe the changes. These are incremental changes. This is important. Like in meditation, always looking for wow moments and now I understand. Mostly it's not like that. And the best analogy, I think, is going out, if you're walking in the rain, okay? So you walk a few steps and you're wet, you know you're wet. But if you go out in the fog, you can walk for an hour and you come back and you don't realize until you take off your jacket and your jacket's wet. And many of the changes that take place through Dhamma practice are like fog. They're not things that you see, wow, but there's just a gradual increase in the quality of your life. The amount, the awareness you have, the kindness you have, the patience that you have, the general alertness that you have. These are improving incrementally, not dramatically, for most of the time. So you need to observe more closely when you practice the Dhamma, and not. You see, many people practice the Dhamma in unwise ways. It's often you have some problem, some suffering, and you say, "Oh, now I need to practice," and maybe go on a 10-day retreat or something like that. And it's a bit like when you're ill and you go to the doctor and the doctor says, okay, these are antibiotics. You have to take the whole course. You don't stop when you start to feel better. Because if you do, your mind will develop a resistance to the... But that's what most people do with Dhamma practice. You're miserable or you're upset about something and you just really try hard and feel a bit better. And then you just relax. It's like you don't take the whole course of the medicine. And before very long, you start to feel miserable again. And then it's harder than it was because you have this resistance now. You haven't taken the whole of the Buddhist course of medicine. Yeah. So you just keep doing it. And what will encourage you is being a little bit more observant of the changes that you feel when you do practice consistently and continuously. You don't have to think about it so much, you don't have to work it all out. And practice dana. Dana is giving and sharing and doing things for other people. I mean, the rash and the epidemic of depression in the world today, is basically dana deficiency. People are so obsessed about themselves and what I want and what I like and what I don't like. And the moment you start obsessing about me and mine, you're on the path to depression, basically. When you give and share and do things for others, it's just obvious, it just makes you feel so much better and takes you out of that self-obsession. And it's easy when we have problems and you just, your mind's going over and over like chewing on this bone, and it doesn't really take you anywhere. So find some joy, do some good things that you feel proud of, Every day before you go to bed, you should do something, well, I don't know I've achieved very much, but I did that one thing, and I feel proud of that, and nobody can take that away from me. Just that, your mental health will improve a great deal. Okay. Yes, the Theravada Buddhists, all the Theravada Buddhists, they're so miserable. It's all dukkha, 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 suffering, suffering, suffering. But the thing you have to remember is, before you can really understand suffering, you have to have a happy mind. If you have a miserable mind, you can't understand misery. You have to have a happy mind. Yeah.
How do I reduce stress while preparing for competitive exams?
Well, I would make a a distinction between pressure and stress. So that you're always going to have pressure in life of one kind or another. And so we develop that patience to bear with pressure. But stress arises where I don't want this pressure, go away, or a lot of thinking and worrying. If I don't pass, then what will happen? Or maybe my parents will be disappointed, or I won't get this job, or I won't. So it's really a thinking problem, isn't it? And that's compounded sometimes by unwise approach to preparation for exams. So time management skills are very important. So a lot of teenagers, I speak to, they don't prepare well enough in advance, and they putting things off and procrastinate, and so they find they don't have enough time to prepare for their exams. But that problem could be much reduced if they were wiser in their time management skills. So there's two things. There's a kind of worldly, mundane thing about how you study skills, time management. So these will reduce stress significantly. But also for the Dhamma skill is not allowing your mind just to follow the anxiety and the fears and the desires and things which will turn pressure into stress. With study, study skills, and so I've done a study of study, and the method that I am most impressed with and which I recommend is called the Feynman method. Does any teachers here, do anybody know what this is? Richard Feynman, he was a physicist. He won the Nobel Prize for physics and was renowned for his ability to explain very difficult concepts in understandable language. And he came up with this system where when you read and you try to absorb information, you, having done the initial work, you imagine or perhaps you actually try to explain your understanding of what you just studied to an intelligent 12-year-old child. So if any of you are teachers, you know that if anything is going to expose any kind of black holes in your knowledge or weaknesses or things that you've thought that you understood and you didn't really, the teaching is the very best way to do that, articulating to somebody else. But when you add on that factor of, it can be an imaginary person, it's like 12, 13 years old, very smart. So you're not only are you absorbing information, but you're having to digest it and then to summarize and articulate it in a way that an intelligent child could understand. That is a really effective way of learning something, not just like rote learning, but so you really understand the concepts, because understand enough to be able to explain to somebody else. So if you have a good study skill set and you have efficient, you also cultivating memory skills, like mnemonic skills, like memory palace and things like that. Do you know what a memory palace is? Have you heard it?
Yes.
You know what a memory palace is?
Memory palace, Greek memory palace.
And a memory palace is a technique for memorizing large amounts of information, which was first developed by the ancient Greeks. And so the idea with these mnemonic techniques is you have a pegs, like a set number of pegs that you don't have to think, just come to your mind immediately. You don't need to use a palace. You think of your own house or your own room, and just imagine, just say the door is number 1, and the wardrobe is number 2, number 3 is the mirror, number 4 is a kettle, and say you could have, say, 20 items clockwise around your room. And so the moment you close your eyes, you know those 20 items. So whatever pegs you use, they're things that you don't have to think about. They're there immediately. And then when you have new information, you use your imagination to create a link between that new piece of information and your pegs. And so when you're trying to remember the information in your test, you just mentally go through your room. Oh, what was the item that I associated with door? What was the item I associated with wardrobe? What was the item and the concept, the idea that I associated with a mirror? And so you go through these in a systematic way, and you can bring the information to mind. So this is an example of using memory skills, study skills, to take a lot of the stress out of study. Time management skills, planning your time, revision time, and then mindfulness skills, not allowing your mind to get caught up with worries and anticipation. Anything else? What would you like to talk about? Anything at all?
Namaste, Guruji.
Yes.
Actually, I'm having sleep issues for months.
Too much sleep?
I'm sleep deprived for months, Guruji.
Okay.
Actually, because of this, I mess up in many of my things and all daily. As I'm a student, right? That's the thing. Like academically, it's like I'm unable to concentrate also because of lack of sleep and all. And at times, if things I mess up and all, I think about it before my sleep and all. It's becoming vicious cycle again.
Yeah. Well, first of all, before we get into technical details, what do you mean by mess up? I mean, really mess up? Is it so bad? You make mistakes, okay? You see, one of the things to learn is the words we use when we talk to ourselves. They have a conditioning effect on our mental health and our understanding. So if you use really kind of strong words, then that creates, a certain kind of feeling. So I'm messed up, I'm hopeless, I can't, so when you start talking to yourself like that, it's like you're just hitting yourself with a stick, You made mistakes. Hey, who doesn't make mistakes? And mistakes are feedback. Yeah. I mean, most people who are really successful will say they learned the most from the mistakes. Because when you make a mistake, it shows where you still lack understanding. It illuminates your weaknesses and things you need to work on. It's really useful things, mistakes, okay? So don't take this absolute catastrophe. Don't make small things into big things, okay? You seem healthy and you can eat, okay? Yeah, okay. So generally in good health, you're not... Yeah, so that's a lot to be grateful for. So with sleep, of course the most important time is, before you go to sleep? And first off, do you drink tea and coffee and things like that?
Really.
Yeah. So not to take any stimulants after midday. If you do take a cup of tea or something, then maybe that contributes to sleeplessness. And there are certain things that can calm the mind down. So you can experiment a little bit with different kinds of tea and warm milk for some people, just a little warm milk before you go to bed. So physical things like that. And anxiety and stress, we store it in the body, so it's not just a mental thing. And so some yoga is very good in the evening before just... So there are some yoga exercises that are kind of stimulating and others that are calming. So you ask someone who knows about yoga and find you don't need to do like a whole yoga session. Just 2 or 3 asanas that calm the body down. Hot bath before bed, that's very calming. So there are many different things you can try. Okay. But the important thing is just to let go before you sleep. You say, okay, that's today, and today's enough. And tomorrow we start again, fresh day. And if you review the day, then if you made some mistakes, you can forgive yourself. I did my best. Maybe it wasn't good enough sometime, but that's normal. Everyone has that experience, okay? So don't have too unattainable goals and expectations of yourself. Okay? So you want to, when in putting forth effort in your life, it's like a sport where you play against someone who's just a bit better than you are. It brings out the best in you. But if your opponent is just a different class, it's just depressing. So, and it's similar with goals and expectations. Don't be too impatient and wanting everything to happen too quickly and too easily. And it's like this. This is how my life is right now. It's like this, and you can't guarantee that you won't make mistakes. But what you can say is, I am someone who learns from my mistakes. So if you want to review today and things that didn't go so well, then you say, what can I learn from this? And that already you feel more positive, So when you lay down, first of all, just strain like through your body from your face down to your feet, and then relax, and then your shoulders, and then relax. Do it with your arms and your hands and your whole body. Do that 2 or 3 times, and then, before just do some metta, loving kindness, chanting and meditation. It's very good, and then do this exercise, and then lay down. And just start to focus on your breath. And you say, if I sleep, I sleep. If I don't sleep, I meditate. Win-win situation. Okay. And when you have that sense, if I sleep, it's okay. If I don't sleep, it's okay. You usually fall asleep. But if this is a really chronic problem, it means you've developed some very unwise habits of thinking about yourself and thinking about your capabilities and thinking about other things. So you need to be letting go and changing the way that you need to find a way of encouraging yourself, not just telling yourself off and making catastrophes out of small things, that are. And just remember what you're grateful for in your life. That's a very good way to start off in the morning. Okay, you wake up in the morning. What are the 3 best things in my life right now, today? You have 3 good things in your life? I think you do. Yeah. And then just be grateful for those things. Good way to start the day. Okay.
Karakara Rajan. My question is, what are the conditions that operate Sakaya Dristhi? And does absence of mindfulness and sampajanya are causes for the Sakaya Dristhi to arise?
Sakaya Ditti.
Yeah. And then second question. When you said that we should understand the mental processes rather than the events in our mind, are you pointing it towards the paticca samutpada and the conditional arising associated with it? Thank you, Rajan.
Yes, well, one of the Pali phrases, very fascinating, profound phrases, translated as me-making and mind-making. So phenomena arise due to causes and conditions, and in the absence of mindfulness and clear comprehension, we identify with them, we grasp onto them, and that is the arising of the sense of me and mine. So with the cultivation of mindfulness, clear comprehension, grounded in the Eightfold Path, then that me-making and mind-making becomes much less. But it has to be supplemented with samadhi and vipassana before it's completely uprooted and the level of stream entry. But we can observe Sakaya Ditti, in how that manifests, and talking about this before, it's us and them and me. So the intensity of Sakaya Ditti is not stable throughout the day. And noticing that if you're acting very kindly and doing some good thing for someone without any hope for any kind of reward, that sense of attachment to 5 khandhas and Sakaya Ditti is rather weakened. And if you're angry or jealous or hurt, then it becomes very strong. So recognizing the relationship between kusala, akusala dhammas, and the intensity of Sakaya Ditti, that's one part of wisdom development. Of course, causality is, the Buddha revealed the paticca samuppada, which is the most difficult, profound element of his teaching. And he acknowledged that as well. There's a famous conversation with Venerable Ananda, where Venerable Ananda sort of exclaims, it's not so difficult, the paticca samuppada, and he says, do not say that, Ananda. It is difficult. It's so difficult. That was one of the reasons the Buddha hesitated to teach in the first place. But if we look at paticca samuppada, it's not simply those 12 links. That's the kind of the most complete expression of it. But it appears in many different forms, and some, in the suttas, in some places, just a certain number of links. So I'm not so. I don't think it's so important to do a really academic study of paticca samuppada myself in practice. But what we can see as those crucial links from Phassa, Vedana, Tanha, Upadana. So Phassa is sense contact, and in any sense contact there is always Vedana. So pleasant, unpleasant, neutral feeling, or neutral feeling tone, as modern translators. And I prefer that, feeling tone rather than feeling. It's a lot more precise. And in the absence of vijja, or understanding, mindfulness, clear comprehension, then Vedana leads upadana. So that's the sort of the key stretch of this in terms of everyday practice. So if you're having that clarity and sharpness of mind as sense contact, and the Vedana which is arising in sense contact, then you can prevent the Tanha. And if the Tanha does not arise at that moment, then there's no upadana and there's no consequent suffering. So in terms of practice, it's really that being aware of what's going on at the sense basis. Has a practice of Paticcasamuppada. Paticcasamuppada is can be looked at from many different angles as well. The Abhidhamma analysis is like in a single mind moment, there's all 12 links, and then in the suttas themselves, which are a primary source, then the Buddha's it's clear that the Buddha's talking of something that takes place over lifetimes as well. So it's not only like a single mind moment, and you don't have to choose between those two.
For Ajahn, this becoming aspect is there. Is it leads to future births?
Sorry?
Becoming.
Yeah.
After upadana, there's a becoming.
Yeah.
Next link.
Yeah.
When that doesn't fructify, will it lead to future rebirth? Like it's like a karma.
No, that's already. I mean, bhava and jati. You can't separate the two. It's just one thing. But this is also not a step-by-step process. It's not temporal process. It's the different components of avijja. It's a very. I don't tend to teach Paticcasamuppada very much because I think it too often leads to an intellectual cul-de-sacs, and we should always be coming back to pariyati, patipati, pativeta. Okay, so what is pariyati? And pariyati is the intellectual knowledge, the map, the theory that you need for patipati. And what things should you practice? Those things that lead to pativeta. So of all the possible things that you could study, there's so much, even within Buddhist realm, that your filter is what is practical, what can you make use of in your practice. Life's too short to get caught up in too much. The thing is about Buddha Dhamma, it's so intellectually satisfying. If you have that kind of cerebral mind, it's like a drug. I know it's not being disrespectful, but it's so beautiful, it's so fascinating, it's so profound. But that can be a trap also. So you have to keep bringing it back. Well, what is actually practical? What am I taking away from this study that I can apply in my daily life?
So I would request both of you to make a space, because the one who is asking question can come here so that Ajahn doesn't have to
Yes.
look aside and pain, right? Please. So, yes. Can you a little bit? Yeah, thank you. Yeah. You can go in the middle.
Vandami Bhanteji. My question is, I have two questions. One is how to understand the time stress. Like time is running out. Like by the evening, I generally feel like, oh, the time today it's gone. So that one, and the second question is first question is how to detach myself from the time clicking, and the second question is how do I maintain complete acceptance of my situation and my life in the present moment, and also at the same time have an intention to take action for the next goal or desire you set. So having a desire and goal but not suffering because of it, maintaining that complete acceptance.
Well, with any practice and a way of dealing with challenges or phenomena, we always come back to this kusala, akusala, Dhamma. So, with regard to our relationship with time, this is the question. How can I have a kusala relationship to time? So what are the akusala aspects of a relationship? What are the kusala relationship? So the Buddha encouraged us to remember this in one of the 10 daily reflections of a monk and a nun is, time is passing relentlessly. What are you doing with your time? And we have chants, I'm of the nature to age, I'm of the nature to sicken. We have maranasati practices, I'm going to die. So this bringing to mind the shortness and the uncertainty of life is a practice that the Buddha recommended very much. So, and of course it's obvious, isn't it, that clock time and subjective time are two different things. And if you're enjoying yourself, then time flies, and if you're bored, then time drags. But it's more a matter of bringing that attention to how can I best spend the time that I have and appreciate the time. So it's, again, it's the same answer as being mindful and aware as best you can, and not allowing time to dissipate with trivial matters. So I think that giving up really unwholesome activities is not so difficult once you have that love of the Dhamma and you have taken refuge in Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. But what is difficult is giving up the trivial and the distractions, because they don't feel like bad. You say, well, these are harmless things. Don't hurt anybody, and I need some relaxation, and you do. There's no question. But it's not just the thing itself. It's what is preventing you from doing, because you have limited amount of time. So you could spend, trolling, sort of scrolling through social media or YouTube things, and suddenly an hour's gone or something. And it's, maybe you learn one or two things and you've relaxed. But the question is not so much whether or not those things that you spent time on are bad in themselves, is that they prevented you doing things that are better than that. So having sometimes it's kind of artificial to begin with, like a schedule, and in terms of how you're going to spend your free time when you're not at work or not studying.
Actually, I have a just added question. Yeah. In general, even if I generally follow a schedule. even with the schedule, whatever I do, I just feel somehow there's so many things I want to do and still not able to, like, that time doesn't feel like sufficient enough to do those things.
Yeah, that's a feeling. I mean, many people have that feeling, but then it's just, well, yeah, this is what life's like. It's like this, and you're actually fortunate to feel that in a way that there are things that inspire and you're passionate about to have that kind of feeling. It's not such a bad thing, but it's. This, why I want it all, and I want it all right now, and you can't have it all. I mean, this is the dukkha of life, is that we always have to make choices, and it's not always between what's good and what's bad, but it can be what's very good and what's quite good, and you can't have it all. And allowing that sense of, it's a kind of a grief, that there are things that you would like to experience, and maybe you have the capacity to experience, but time doesn't allow you to do that. So that's the part of acceptance. And going on to the second question, so the idea of acceptance is acceptance is a springboard. It's not the end of the practices. Now I can accept my situation. Now I can accept myself for who I am, and all these kind of American kind of slogans that spread throughout the world. You can be whatever you want to be and follow your dream and all these kinds of stuff. Most of them quite, in my view, quite ridiculous and harmful, actually, in many cases. But before you can move forward, you have to accept, well, it's right now, it's like this. And once you have that full acceptance of, given all the causes and conditions prevailing right now, it couldn't be any other way. But moving forward, what should I do? And then because you have that equanimous mind where you've accepted it all and you're not fighting against something, or why me, it's not fair, and all that kind of reaction, or I want so much more than this, it's like this right now. And then you can, is it a practical, well, what's the next step? And of all these conditions that are prevailing right now, some we say, actually I can do something about this, and I could do something about that. And this maybe is going to take longer time. But then you can come up with an effective strategy. But before you can do that, there has to be acceptance and awareness of exactly what's going on. And then you move forward. And motivating yourself is a very important Dhamma skill to develop. Of course, it's wonderful if there are teachers that come and inspire us, but how often does that happen? And on a daily basis, you need to be able to inspire yourself and to bring teachings, uplifting teachings and reflections to your mind. And again, to my view, so much of Dhamma practice is observation. It's trial and error. Even if you have a great teacher and you have access to all the teachings, at the end of the day, so much is trial and error, because even teachings the Buddha himself gave, can say they work for 80 or 90% of the people, or 80 or 90% of the time, but it's not 100% thing. So this is why I'm always wary of technique-based. Only this is right, everything else is wrong. You just do this technique, don't think about it. I've never seen that really to be borne out with large groups of people. There are always minorities it doesn't work for. So with motivating yourself, then we make this distinction again between kusala motivation and akusala motivation. And this distinction is fundamental to Buddha Dhamma. But one of the reasons, that unfair criticisms of Buddha Dhamma made by non-Buddhists is, Buddhists say desire is wrong and you should get rid of all desire. And then, so what are you going to do? Just sit around, sort of looking dopey all day. The idea without stimulating desire, then we would be lazy, or we wouldn't accomplish anything. And so because there's not a recognition that you can have wise motivation and unwise motivation, then in the West you see, like, the capitalist system lacks that awareness, doesn't it? And generally the idea is you stimulate cravings, and you acknowledge that there'll be some unpleasant or undesirable effects from that, whether it's on the society and physical, mental health of some people. But you say overall it's worth it. It's a trade-off. You stimulate desire to create and consume, and that gives a higher standard of living, and you just have to live with things like mental illness and alcoholism and all these kinds of things. And this is the act of faith in the capitalist system, that it's basically worth it. But in Buddha Dhamma we say that we can, in that stream of desire, we should be trying to channel that desire into more as wholesome kinds of kusala desires as possible. So let's give an example. If you're working with craving, and that kind of motivation is you want to get rich, you want status, you want fame, and so that these things are often stimulated with the idea these will make people work hard. But in fact, that kind of motivation causes more problems than it solves. You get a lot of corruption and dishonesty, because people don't have any real joy and pride in the work itself, or very little, because ultimately it's a means to an end, to get the money, to get the wealth, to get the status. And so if there is a shortcut available where you can get all those things without doing all the hard work, well, yeah, that's a very attractive option. And so this is where craving is the main motivating force. You get a lot of corruption. You also get a lot of shabby, sloppy work, because, well, if I can get this finished, in half an hour, and it's twice as good as getting it finished in an hour. I can make more money. So there are so many problems that arise when craving kind of desire is the motivating force. But you have the kusala side, which has a specific name, is chanda or Dhamma chanda. There your main emphasis is on the work itself and taking pride in your work and trying to increase your skills, make your work better, innovate if you like, but it's the work itself which motivates you, wanting to do your job well. And then it's not that you make sort of sacrifices of all these things like wealth and fame or status necessarily, because if your motivation is to do your job well, you're going to be, all things being equal, which of course they're not, but you're going to be successful. It's not you're making a sacrifice in the world by being more virtuous. No, and you enjoy it, and you're not always working in order to get something, but you enjoy the work itself. So that's the kind of motivation in work. And it's similarly in Dhamma practice. If people practice Dhamma sometimes, with that craving motivation, I want to get enlightened, I want peace, I want that, and I want this. And that leads to all kinds of problems, and it's not a successful way to motivate yourself. And it's like, well, I'm making no progress, why is it taking so long? And whereas if your main motivation is on the practice itself, and just seeing this as most wonderful thing you could do with your life, and following in the footsteps of the great arahants, and following in the teachings of the Lord Buddha, and doing the best you can and letting go of results, then that's such much more of a healthy motivation. So letting go or acceptance is of the situation as it presents itself right now, given all the causes and conditions that prevail, but going forward in recognition of all those causes and conditions, and you see where is a practical way where you can put forth effort in a constructive and effective way.
Good evening, Ajahn. Ajahn, I have two questions. The first question is, these days we kind of tend to do a lot of multitasking. We are kind of involved in a lot of activities. And we often tend to find ourselves, checking our phones often, checking social media often, to a point that I believe once dopamine receptors itself get so saturated that there's barely any motivation left to do wholesome things. So how does one train one's mind to do the boring things repeatedly rather than chasing stimulation constantly? That's the first question. And the second question is, what are Theravada's thoughts on manifestation? I believe I've read a Mahayana article on, the Buddha helping Queen Vaidehi, King Bimbisara's wife, to attain birth in Pure Land. So, what are Theravada's thoughts on this?
Can you explain the concept of manifestation to me?
While I'm mindful of the fact that we should not be chasing worldly desires, I'm kind of focusing here on chanda or wholesome desires that can elevate one's spiritual practice.
But I must say I've heard this word, is more and more people using this word like manifest and manifestation. What do people mean by that in generally? What?
So it's people believe that you visualize something that you don't have and you feel grateful for it and behave in a way that you already have achieved it, attained it. So that towards the end you finally achieve it.
Okay, so to answer that, again, most of these kind of recycled ideas about the primacy of belief and visualization and things, these are because of the commercial nature. They get it's old wine in new bottles, basically. And it's like you can be whatever you want to be and believe in, and so these are all ideas which have emerged from like Protestant Christianity, whose main position is that belief can overcome all obstacles. So no matter which was how it diverged from Catholicism, with Catholics more idea of like doing good deeds and these will purify you, but the Protestant argument with that is no. Even if you've been a very sinful person, you just believe, and that will wash away all your sins. So how that's got to just spread into modern American culture is this kind of obsession with you just believe, and making belief as something like positive and good in itself. Like if you're someone who believes in something, you're a good person. And that's in dramas or movies or novels, when a lazy writer wants to establish a character as a hero, it's someone who has a belief, believes in himself, so it means there's a good guy or a good woman. And it's, for me, the whole thing, you can be whatever you want to be. Well, and how many people can be astronauts, or how many people can be Prime Minister of India? It's just so obvious. It's like kindergarten logic. You can't all. There are so many other factors involved, and Buddhism is always this very close analysis. What are all the contributory factors to success in life? Okay, so if you have a strong desire and wish for something, you're going to be, you're going to really push. So that's going to increase your chances of attaining that. And if you can visualize it and imagine, then I would imagine that would have some beneficial psychological effects. It's like a meditation technique. But to what extent it actually influences your life in the real world, whether because you can do that you're suddenly going to be the CEO of a big company, or you're going to make $1 million or whatever it is. For me, that's a bit ridiculous. There's just so many other things going on. You can do your social class you were born into, your gender, the conditions you have, access to education, access to healthcare. All these mundane matters in the realm of material world, which are completely indifferent to what you visualize your situation to be. So I'm still a bit surprised that intelligent people can take these ideas so seriously, because it seems to me it's quite obvious, that you tell I've been walking through the villages of Maharashtra and landless peasants and people, and say, you can be whatever you want to. Come on, be real. But this is the American thing. It's the emphasis on the individual, and that's why it's become such a toxic culture now, I think, in America, because every culture has to find some kind of a balance between the needs and the desires of the individual and the common good and common ground. And there are, communist societies, they go the other extreme, and the individual needs are negated. But I think that what we're seeing, like in many cultures, and spreading out through media and through to India and Thailand and everywhere, is this obsession, this narcissistic obsession with, what we like and what we don't like and what we want and so I'm not denigrating those. Those are normal and natural and not to and lead to a lot of good things in the world. But it's, for me, it's gone beyond what's healthy now, and you can see that from the explosion of mental problems and addictions and suicide. I don't know in India, but suicide rates amongst adolescents and university students in Thailand has rocketed, and they it's not publicized because they don't want people to know. But the reasons that young people have now for killing themselves is shocking. How trivial and superficial they are. So manifestation, like a kind of interest, I guess, kind of mental exercise, but might have some contributory, play a role as a contributory factor to worldly success, but certainly not a central role, unless all these other things. You look at people like Warren Buffett and all these people, and they say, what do you attribute your success to? And the most common sort of denominator, when they're being really honest, is I was just in the right time, right place at the right time. Luck, basically, or what we would call barami or good karma. But in the West, they don't have a concept of karma, so they came up with this term, well, luck. What does luck mean? Luck means something you can't explain, either good or bad. Yeah. What was your first question? I forgot your first question.
The first question was, how does one train one's mind to do the boring things again and again rather than chasing stimulation constantly?
Well, meditation is, the clear answer to that. And I mean, my personal anecdote, I entered monastery in 1978 when I was 20 years old. And the disciples of Ajahn Chah, Ajahn Sumedho and his group had looking to establish a monastery in England. And the year that I joined their community, they were offered a piece of land to use temporarily in the countryside. So I joined and spent 3 months practicing and looking at my breath, basically. And then I didn't really, as I was talking about incremental changes, so I didn't really notice those huge changes in myself. And then I went to London. I stayed a few days in a temple in London, waiting because I decided I wanted to go to Thailand. I never wanted to be a monk in the West. I wanted to be a monk in a Buddhist culture, a Buddhist society. So I was planning to fly out to Thailand. And so I had 1 or 2 days left, and I just thought, I want to go and see a movie before I leave the world. And so the temple was in just near Hampstead, which is kind of like intellectual, and there's this posh arts cinema which shows movies like alternative movies from around the world. But that day they happened to be showing a film called Rinaldo and Clara, which was made by Bob Dylan. And it's like 3.5 hours long. This was in a time when long movies were not weren't popular. And the reviews of this movie were absolutely scathing. It's just like an ego project, and it's the most boring movie in the world. It was like one of the common. And so I didn't realize this when I watched it, but I was absolutely glued to the screen like this for like 3.5 hours. That's absolutely brilliant, And afterwards I thought, this is what I've gained from 3 months in a monastery. I don't get bored anymore, So when you're looking, the point about like your breath is it's boring. I mean, there's nothing interesting in the breath. It's precisely why it's such a good object of meditation. So you can watch a movie, or you can binge watch on Netflix or whatever, and you can be totally in the present moment with that for hours on end. But it's not mindfulness. Why? Because you're a passenger. It's passive. You could just, it will take you on a voyage, tears and laughter and heart beating and all these things. And you're just following along with whatever the movie's trying to create within you. But with the breath, that's not going to happen. The only way you're going to be with the breath is by being determined to be with the breath and making that commitment and learning a skill of how to be content with a non-exciting object. And that's an amazing skill. In Thailand, when I speak to teenagers, I don't want to be bossed around by my parents. Who are they to tell me what to do? And I want to be free, and nobody, that kind of teenage energy, And one of the things I say to children, you have a dictator, you have a very ruthless dictator, and you follow the dictates of this dictator all the time. Why don't you rebel against this dictator? And of course they say, who do you mean? I say, boredom is your dictator. The moment you feel bored, you don't want to do it anymore. You stop. You look for some distraction, or you allow your mind to wander off. So you're meditating. What is it? Why do you get distracted? Why does your mind leave the breath and go into the past and the future? Because you're bored. There's not enough stimulation in the breath to keep. So this is life skill you learn from meditation, is how to sustain consciously, voluntarily, learning the skill of sustaining attention on a non-exciting object. And that's what helps you in daily life. You don't feel that constant itch all the time. I want something more than the present moment is giving me. So that's how meditation helps. Otherwise, you can have certain kind of rules and times, and more kind of how much screen time you're going to allow yourself every day and things like that. They're kind of helpful also. But the whole thing about multitasking, there's so many papers have been produced the past few years as multitasking is probably one of the most disastrous ideas. Basically the mind cannot multitask. You're hopping from one thing to another at high speed, and it has detrimental effects on efficiency and all kind. It's not an efficient way of working, even if you can do it. It's just not an intelligent way of working. So doing one thing at a time and giving yourself to that, it just feels healthy and good, Observation again, it's not like I've got to be a good boy and I've got to not do this and I should be like this. But being mindful just feels good. It feels better than being distracted. And if you can see that clearly, I really enjoy my life more when I'm not distracted than when I am. And then it's kind of easy after that, or easier. Okay, I think maybe one more question and
You already had. Please give her.
No, you asked a question already. This lady who hasn't asked anything. Can you speak a bit louder?
Vandami Bhante. My question is regarding whether PT can arise from false views, or is it always a false pressure which arises from it?
Sorry, can you PT
can it arise from false views, or can it always only give us a false pleasure? What is a good way to differentiate between them, an easy way?
PT coming from false views and right views?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, so PT is has no kusala or akusala. It's not inherently kusala. So you can experience joy with all kinds of unwholesome ideas, and that's part of the reason why people get attached to them. That's the bait. So there's no in the quality of BT itself. There's no distinction, but BT coming from right view, from wrong views, will not be accompanied by the other wholesome dhammas, because your mind cannot be wholesome and unwholesome at the same time. So we can't always just take the feeling tone or the feeling as our guide. This is why we need samadhi and right view. And another example is this is not about piti, but something I was talking about to another group earlier today, that let's say your job was to guide drones and to attack buildings or human beings, and if you can, and somebody sitting in front of a screen, would be like a video game, and actually killing somebody would just be like pressing a button or clicking on a keyboard. So I think that it's unlikely that somebody who is doing that would feel very much. It would be kind of just normal, and you're just pressing a keyboard key. And so, because can you mindfully kill somebody? If that person was like totally in the present with their job, which is to make sure this drone lands on this building or this human being or this car. So I think looking at this kind of question is where we see the difference between Buddhist ideas of mindfulness and like the secular mindfulness movement, where the secular mindfulness is more like being totally there without judgment about whatever's happening in the mind at the present moment. But then what happens if you're doing something which is immoral? And are you non-judgmental about that as well? So here you can see the value and importance of precepts. So coming back to your question, I would say precepts are the guide, really. That if your piti is coming from anything that requires breaking any of the 5 precepts, then you're on the wrong track. And keep it, the 5 precepts are an objective, clear boundary for actions which prevent you from harming yourself or others. So they are fundamental, like safety net, that maybe you can experience some kind of piti in some trivial activities and worldly activities, but as long as you're not breaking any of the 5 precepts, or they don't require you to break any of the 5 precepts, you're not going to be, you may not be moving forward, but you're not really moving back and causing problems. So that's the standard I would take for things. But also by listening and studying and that as your knowledge of Buddha Dhamma increases, then that will also give you a good reflection on whether things that you find really stimulating and exciting or blissful are things to be pursued or not. As the mind becomes calm, it becomes more sensitive to the nature of kusala and akusala, and you have a warning system or an inner compass which helps you. Okay, so
Bhante,
yes,
I have a different question to this, related to this. We see that a lot of things can be expressed in multiple ways, but when we cling to a certain kind of interpretation, it is said to be a part of clinging, as per my understanding. So, a recent experiment done in China, it had proved a certain scientific dilemma about the nature of light. And it was concluded that there was no way for light to be directly perceived separately as both a wave and a particle. So within the context of anatta, what does this mean for the Buddha Dhamma?
I don't know whether I can, it's possible to draw those kinds of connections from physical phenomena. But one of the dual nature of light as being particles or waves, that idea has been around for a long time. And one of the interpretations that I've heard is, with regard to light, if you ask light wave questions, it will give you wave answers. And if you ask light particle questions, it will give you particle answers. So it's how you approach your perception. But that doesn't have any necessary implications for Dhamma practice. We're talking because that's the perception of physical phenomena. But I would say that this is a point I made right at the beginning of this session, that the words that you use to articulate your practice or your idea of who you are and what you're doing, these do have significant impact. An example, for example, is like samadhi. I've never liked the word concentrate. Because for me it brings out all this kind of negative, like the teacher in the school, it brings the ruler down on the desk, concentrate, So for me concentration is always connected with this idea of stress and force, and it just doesn't bring up good results. And I like the idea of meditation as being a way of learning how to create a relationship between the mind and mental objects such that akusala dhammas will not enter the mind. So it's creating the best possible relationship. And what is that best possible relationship? Well, contentment, interest, clarity, alertness. These are the qualities of mind that will make sure that your mind is not going to be drawn off into distraction. So for me, this is a much better way to think about meditation. Rather, I got to concentrate on my breath. I'm going to try to find a relationship between my mind and the breath, such that my mind will be content with the breath and will not fall into the hindrances. So there are so many areas of life. It's review the words that you use and the ideas that you adopt. And there are so many of these like micchaditthi kinds of things that have just entered popular culture now. I was at a conference with psychiatrists and therapists in Bangkok recently, and one of the speakers was a Freudian. I thought Freudian ideas has sort of disappeared by now, but she was a kind of hardline Freudian therapist. But one of the things she was talking about is how many people these days feel they're not good enough. And I couldn't help, I was trying to be very diplomatic, but I said, where does that idea come from? What does it mean? You see, it's not a grammatical phrase, it's not a meaningful phrase. Like if you say, I'm not a good enough swimmer to represent my country, that's a reasonable kind of thing. But it has to be specific, I'm not, what are the criteria here we're talking about? What area of life are we talking about? And then you can say what your skill level or and how that relates to the standard necessary. And you say, well, I don't reach that standard, I'm not good enough. But when you have that idea, I'm not good enough, it just becomes like another kind of sakkaya ditthi, this I am this person who's not good enough. And it's just basically another way of putting yourself down and making yourself feel miserable. And it's just a sloppy use of thought and a sloppy use of language. But it's coming, all these things coming to us through media and through, and we have to be very careful about how we adopt and which I'm not saying erect a wall and don't take any influence from other cultures, because there's a lot of really helpful stuff out there. But we need to have a right view, Buddha Dhamma, so that we know what is compatible with our own path of practice and what is incompatible. I think probably enough for this evening. Thank you.
So we all thank Bhante, Ajahn, for coming all the way to Hyderabad out of compassion for all of us. Bhante has come and had a long journey and delayed flight and all, and a big traffic. We were stuck, and despite that, Ajahn has been here for almost now 2 hours, and out of compassion has given the teaching to all of us. As Ajahn mentioned in the beginning, Ajahn was in Maharashtra for almost 9 days on Tudong, which is like walking from village to village like Buddha used to do, to give people chance to earn punya by offering pindapat, and also to learn some Dhamma. So that also Ajahn has been doing out of great compassion for the people in Maharashtra, because a lot of people there took Buddha Dhamma because of Dr. Ambedkar, but have not much sort of progress to the extent necessary. So Ajahn realized that and has out of compassion been walking and going from village to village to spread Dhamma. Ajahn came last time here as well, you may be, or many of you may be aware. And then tomorrow Ajahn going to Bangalore, our headquarters, for some Dhamma teaching there, and then go back to Bangkok. So, as you all know, Ajahn is a direct disciple of Ajahn Chah, maybe aware or many of you, one of the most renowned and respected and meditation teacher, practitioner in the modern time in Thailand. So not only in Thailand but all over the world, the teaching of Ajahn Chah spread, and we are also getting in India now back. So in India, though Buddha Dhamma started here, but it's like a new foreign religion or foreign teaching for us Indians. But it is making a lot of progress from because of many people. So we are once again very thankful to Ajahn and express our gratitude. So now all of us pay respect to Ajahn, and then we seek blessing from Ajahn. Okasa vandami bhante dwarate na katam sabbang aparadang kamatha me bhante dutiyampe okasa Vandami Bhante Dwarate Nakatang Sabbang Aparadang Kamathame Bhante Tatiyampi Okhasa Vandami Bhante Dwarate Nakatang Sabbang Aparadang Kamathame Bhante Anukampang Upadaya.
Ichitang batitang tumhang kippa mewa sumichato sape porentu sankapa chando panaraso yatha manicho tiraso yatha sapitiyo vivachanto sabharoko vinasatu mate bhavat vantarayo sukhi dikayuko bhava Apiwadana silisa nitjang vata pachayino Chataro dhamma vatanti ayu vano sukhang phalang.
Sadhu. So we conclude here, and